This is Real Estate 360. I'm your host, Steve Vazza. I have the pleasure of introducing Sandi Silk from Jefferson Apartment Group. Sandi is a development partner and vice president with the firm. Sandi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, happy holidays to you as well.
Absolutely, you know? It's the season.
It really is the season. I've been traveling, and I seldom do that. Just in December, and I came back, and all of a sudden I said to my wife, "It's Christmas." Like it's unusual for me, and exciting. We're seeing some exciting times here in the Boston market. Jefferson Apartment Group, you guys have apartment complexes, up and down the East Coast, as far as I know. Your particular focus within the firm is here in the Boston market. You're in the acquisition side, development. Tell me a little bit about what you do, as well as the Jefferson Apartment Group.
Great, thanks for the opportunity. So Jefferson Apartment Group, or JAG as we often refer to it, is headquartered in the McLean, Virginia area, headquartered in our nation's capital. And we have offices up and down the eastern seaboard, in Orlando, Florida, in the mid-Atlantic, with an auxiliary office in Philadelphia, and then we also have the office here up in Boston. Out of each of our offices, we run development and acquisitions. We do also look for existing product, but for the most part, our bread and butter is developing deals and bringing our expertise.
Raw land, your expertise is taking it through permitting, identifying it, permitting it,
exactly.
And construction.
Exactly,
yep.
Exactly. So I'm always on the hunt for opportunities that have a good story to them. And in truth, we will talk a little bit more, I think, about a project we're underway on in Malden, but that had a great story, transit-oriented, kind of a close-in suburb, 15 minutes by train to Boston. And so those are the kinds of sites we really look for.
Now, do you develop in downtown Boston as well?
We haven't as JAG. I have in my prior lives.
Sure.
Previously, I worked on a project that went up in Chinatown in the early 2000s, and one of the first projects in North Point.
I know it well. Yeah. How can you not know it?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know you're formerly from Dallas. You've obviously had a lot of apartment experience with JPI in your former life and Archstone. So you've got significant experience in over the years of your career. Let's talk about Boston, and we've seen some unprecedented growth. You're in one of the hottest sectors there is, which is obviously multifamily. How do you see, is it sustainable, what's going on in downtown Boston? I mean, obviously we've got a massive amount of students that graduate every year from our great schools, and most of them stay here, which is great. So we talk about absorption. I personally think that there's a lot of room for absorption. I'd be interested to know how you feel, Sandi.
We definitely feel like there's a lot of room. I think that one of the challenges is that development in this cycle has really been focused in what I would refer to as the sexy projects, the sexy tower projects in the seaport have gotten a lot of play. Yes. Everybody's seen them. It's the rising of a brand new neighborhood. What's gotten a little less play is the places just outside of Boston, places like Malden, places like Chelsea and Everett that are really starting to see growth. Back 20 plus years ago when I came out of school, everybody was living in Somerville because it was affordable. Somerville's not so affordable anymore. Yep. And so those same folks who would have 20 years ago lived in Somerville are now moving to Medford and Malden and Everett and Chelsea.
It's amazing the growth that's taken place up in those areas.
Absolutely. And if you look at supply in some of those places, the supply coming online, particularly in the Chelsea-Everett corridor, is fairly competitive with what's coming out in the seaport. And what's interesting is that the price point to live in those places, Chelsea, Everett, Medford, Malden, is probably $1,000 or more a unit less. And that's the driver, is you can pay a lot less and you can be an Uber ride away. And you're not going to spend $1,000 a month in Uber rides, so it's worth the discount to live a little further out.
And how do you see some of the trends in terms of the younger people? What amenities do you find are kind of the hot buttons right now?
Great question. So everybody knows about WeWork,
Absolutely.
Right? And lots of people are working at home. Work life have completely intermingled, and so we're seeing a lot. Where it used to be a set-aside conference room and a really old-school type business center, today we're seeing Wi-Fi throughout a property, in and outside the property. We're also seeing lots of opportunities for small conference space that can be transformed, can be opened up, or could be closed off depending on how people want to use it.
And is that available as a, do you pay for that?
It's all included.
It's all included.
It's all
That's
included
fantastic.
here. And different properties have different approaches. The project I'm working on now that it'll deliver in 2 years is really, we've got a separate conference room somebody could reserve if they wanted, or they could just use, and then we've created lots of nooks and crannies, if you will, for people to have a quiet space to work. There's a phrase out in the market called alone together, where that I've heard some interior designers specifically speak about, which kind of gets to the point of why people are sitting in a coffee shop doing work. They're working by themselves, they're not talking to anybody, but they don't want to be alone.
Right.
So they want to be together with other people, but they're still working solo.
Together but alone?
Together but alone.
I like that because, as you and I were talking about before, we started on camera here, I'm a real estate developer, and part of what I've done is I've dabbled a little bit in the shared office concept. My particular brand is called Office Link, and we're in the suburbs. But, for me, and I completely appreciate what you just said, is there are so many people out there right now that, they're working at a Starbucks or a coffee shop or from home. I certainly know I wouldn't have the discipline to work from home, but the shared office concept, or in your particular case where you're providing it as an amenity in your communities, it gives people the ability to, interact with other adults and just be out there and not feel like, I'm laying around my house and, doing a little bit of work. And that's a really nice feature that you offer. Absolutely.
And the other thing on the amenity side is in the last 10, 15 years, the amenities have really changed. We joke about the amenity wars becoming increasingly aggressive. Everybody's trying to one-up them, each other, in terms of what they're providing, because you're trying to provide things that are current. I actually spoke on a panel recently about amenities and did a lot of research, and it was fascinating to see in Houston somebody built a cantilevered pool 40 stories up in the air. Wow. And the bottom of the pool has a glass bottom that hangs out over the city,
pretty cool.
Which sounded pretty cool. Yeah. Hard to imagine here in Boston.
Hard to imagine, yes.
But it just speaks to the level that people are going to relative to amenities. Locally, we see more, I think we're going to see more retail blending into buildings in the inside and the lobby spaces. We take a lot of cues from the boutique hotel and high-end hotel industry. So that seems to be kind of the direction. And then food. Figuring out how to get food at your front door or really just inside your lobby space, I think, is really a next wave.
So let me ask you, Sandi, you're at the forefront of transit-oriented development, and you've got an exciting project going up in Malden. Let's talk about it.
Love to.
I'm sure you would, and you should, because it's a fantastic project. So Malden has, I've been going to Malden for years. It's not the same place it used to be. Great city, a lot happening, but in particular, your development is going to change things.
So we're working in collaboration with the City of Malden and Mayor Christensen's office to reopen Pleasant Street in Malden, which for those in the audience who know, Pleasant Street is the primary retail core, kind of the historic retail core in Malden. And it was cut off from the train in the early 70s when the city, in its wisdom at the time, put their city hall and police station, a government center, if you will, at one end of Pleasant Street, and was planning for Jordan Marsh to go in at the other end. And so they were going to create a grand pedestrian corridor that a couple years later died off because the Wellington Mall was built. Ironically, the Wellington Mall is also being redeveloped today into a center with a Wegmans and more of a lifestyle center.
Fabulous.
But back to our project in Malden. So we are transforming Malden Center by reopening this gateway between the retail strip of Pleasant Street and the train.
And this is a private-public partnership.
It's a public-private partnership in a lot of ways. So on its most basic level, the City of Malden sold us the bulk of the land. We also purchased some adjacent property from a church that had been in the area and was declining. The project itself became an even stronger public-private partnership when we collaborated with the city and ended up, we are building a shell of office space. The project includes 320 apartments, 45,000 square feet of office space, and almost 25,000 square feet of retail space, in addition to parking for both the retail and the residential components. That 45,000 square feet of office space has been pre-sold to the City of Malden as an office condominium, which they are going to convert to their city hall. So in this great twist of fate, as things happen, City Hall will actually remain in Malden Center. And then the city is utilizing a program called the HDIP program, which stands for Housing Development Incentive Program, that's created by the state, DHCD, for gateway cities, of which Malden is one. And that program allows gateway cities to offer tax abatements to market rate residential developers and projects.
Is there an affordable component?
So this project actually doesn't have an affordable component because as a gateway city, the Commonwealth is trying to encourage the creation of market rate housing to feed economic development and growth in these cities, to balance out the income levels throughout those cities, so you end up with more diversity in the retail
Sure, I
mix.
totally understand. It's a fantastic approach.
Exactly, and there's not a lot of programs that really, truly are creating a subsidy of sorts for market rate housing. In this case, we use that subsidy really creatively in that we were struggling with cost at one point in the project. The city was struggling, we were struggling. And by working together, truly collaboratively, we came up with the idea of using the HDIP program to take the value that's created by the tax abatement for the developer and the value that the city would be giving up in those taxes and trading that essentially with the city and applying it to the cost of the city hall. So at the end of the day, the city is paying a relatively small amount for the city hall in cash, but a much larger amount in tax value.
Sure, absolutely.
And so working together, we were able to create even more value for all the parties. And the state has been incredibly supportive of the project as well, because the city needed to move the police station, and the state ended up generously stepping in with some MassWorks money.
And I would imagine, Sandy, that because it was a collaboration, it certainly sounds like it was a very friendly and amicable situation, that it moved relatively fast, or as fast as it can, a project of this size, through the permitting process, which I know you've had your hand in.
Right. So what I will say is the whole process as a whole felt like it was painfully slow at times.
Always does.
But the permitting pieces actually went very quick. We got our permits in one meeting. We had to get a zoning variance as well. We got that in one meeting. And a lot of that had to do with working closely with the city. Our interests are very much in alignment. And so working this closely with the jurisdiction has benefits all the way through, where you're not getting favored, but they have a vested interest in us getting through all the pieces of the process quickly. Because at this point, every day that we're delayed is a day longer that they have to rent office space before they get into their new space.
Sure, so there's certainly the incentive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But they've been great. And having worked in lots of jurisdictions, the ones where you've got a collaboration with the municipal government, and there's a strong desire and support for the project, makes all the difference.
It really does. It really does. So speaking of incentive to get in and all that, when will construction be complete?
So construction there will be complete in early 19.
Okay.
And we are going to start delivering retail spaces at the end of 18 and residential units shortly thereafter.
And what's the typical square footage price on the rentals?
So the rentals on average are in the kind of mid 2000s for a 1 to 2 bedroom.
So as we mentioned earlier, certainly probably at least $1,000 more than units in closer to the city.
Yeah, $1,000 less.
I apologize. I had Dave walking in the middle of my thought. Yes, $1,000 less. I mean, that's absolutely fantastic. So, tell me about some of the other projects that you have going right now, and whether it's here or in the Mid-Atlantic and Southern states.
Sure. So we actually just closed on an acquisition in Norwood of a property called One Upland, which we're super excited about, and just took over the management of that. And then we're expanding our fee-based property management component. So always looking for other partnerships.
New opportunities
right
for management.
There. Yep. And then in the Mid-Atlantic, we have just delivered units in a project called Maybrook, just outside Philadelphia on the Main Line, which is a beautiful property in a very affluent part of Philadelphia.
And would you classify these as Class A space?
Absolutely.
Because that's primarily your portfolio.
Exactly.
Is Class A product,
Exactly.
as I know it.
We do acquire a little bit of value add opportunities,
Yep.
but for the most part, everything we build is truly considered luxury in its market.
Yep.
And just using Malden as an example there, Malden's rents are top of the market for Malden, but they're adding to the overall affordability in the region by bringing units that are less than kind of at the core in downtown Boston or Cambridge.
Sure. So, typically in your development program, your company, you're looking to acquire land, take it through the necessary approval process. You take it through construction. As I know it, you do your own construction. Maybe not in all markets.
We actually hire a GC
Yep.
for construction.
I'm in
at this
construction
point.
management.
Right,
You
we do
manage
our
your own
yes,
construction.
exactly. We
Yes.
do our own construction management in-house,
Yep.
but we usually collaborate with a general contractor.
Sure. Hire some local architects. I'm not sure who you use in
Exactly.
this market.
In Malden, we've used CBT. At
Oh, sure.
Arlington, we use the architectural team. So definitely using some of the
I've
best
worked
and
with them all.
brightest.
best in the business. That's fantastic. So let me ask you, Sandi, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you, whether they have a piece of property that they think could be or should be developed for apartments, whether it's in this market or other markets, how do people get in touch with you?
I would say the easiest way is to send me an email. My email is ssilk@jagllc.com. They could also go to our company website, which is jeffersonapartmentgroup.com. And there's a contact page there, contact us page, which will also have a link to me.
Great. Well, there you have it. Sandi from Jefferson Apartment Group. If you have any apartment properties or property management that you think you'd like to talk to Sandi about, this is the place to find her.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Steve. Really appreciate
Thank you.
the time.